The social problem started very simply in my father's living room. And just as Gail thought we were crazy 3 years ago, my dad was watching a lot of news about 5 years ago. And what he kept watching was the water problem that was so great around the world. I mean, we're 7 billion people, and yet 2 billion people see water, clean water, as a luxury. And that problem is solvable. I think Nate said it yesterday. He said that the problem is not the quantity of resources, the problem is a distribution problem. It's getting it from one part of the world where there is a great abundance, and in this case we saw it in Alaska, for example. You've got glaciers that are melting right into the ocean. That's fresh water that is being wasted. Meanwhile, halfway around the world, you have people that are dying from lack of hydration. So the idea of how do you transport and solve what Nate said was a huge distribution logistics problem. How do you move that from point A to point B around the world? And the idea started with, well, we could have oil tankers, old retired oil tankers, and put it in the hull of the ship, and we could put a bladder in there so that it's protected and clean. The problem is you get it to the other end, you get it to the port, and then what? Because the people that are out in the bush, you can't take water buffalo trucks. You can't take those big water trucks way out into the bush. These are folks that live in remote areas that you have to airdrop resources into. These are areas where you might have to take a boat to move goods for 24 to 48 hours and then still walk the product another day or two to where they are. So again, bringing it in ships made no sense. So the idea of around a container, something that you could do in bulk, it could act like what we were trying to do in the hull of the ship because it's maximizing the cube space. It's using as much of that space as possible. But at the other end, you're able to hand out a container and easily distribute. So that's where WaterBrick started. But we got a challenge because we've been friends with Jean-Michel Cousteau through some other relationships, through some other interests around water. And he said to my father one day at breakfast, this is a great idea. There is a great need for this. There's just one problem. Help solve the problem of plastic waste littering my oceans. There is PET bottles that the size of Texas swirling in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. There are whole countries that have no idea what to do with plastic waste. We take for granted that waste management is a simple solution, that we have that here. Again, in many, many countries, they have no idea what to do with that plastic waste management. So how can we take a product that's at the heart of it, a simple container, and make it into something that can be reused and repurposed in for many different social needs so that it does not become waste? That was the challenge. And therein lied the innovative idea of WaterBrick. So like I said, yes, it is just a container, but that challenge caused us to rethink the design. So the first thing that we did was, my father's background as a builder, was make them like building blocks. And I love Legos. I don't know who loves Legos, but I love Legos, and it's simple. People get that analogy that they can interlock and cross-stack just like Legos. So what you have now, instead of a round container that wastes about 40% of space because it's not a box, it does not stack up, further wasting space. What you have is a bulk delivery system maximizing space when you're shipping, distributing, and on the other end, what you have now created for people that don't have a pantry system, you've created a pantry system that is movable so that they can take that container, collect water, collect food, and in their limited housing space create what we take for granted. This is their pantry system. So the further aha moment was that this product is not just about water. At a certain point of socially designing this further and further to add more ways to, again, meet Cousteau's challenge, we realized that this was no longer about that initial news story. Yes, that was a huge component, but it became something bigger because we rose to the challenge of that. And in doing so, we were starting now to look at how could this one idea address many socially relevant problems. So over the years, as we've continued to have dialogue with universities and government officials and NGOs, the idea of all of the other things that now can happen, and whether or not you read through all of these or not, these are all of the uses that thought leaders like the folks here, you all in this room, you start to look at this product and say, wow, did you think about this idea? Did you think about that? And then we've had universities that have called and said, I would love to test these for some other use that we had never thought about. So what's exciting about this product, that in that aha moment, that as time progresses, this one product continues to add many, many uses, and therein lies the sustainability. Just to highlight a couple of these, as you saw out there, it's clearly could be used for housing. That could clearly also be a school or a clinic. It could be used as a sandbag. I was speaking to somebody yesterday and I said, and I'll talk about this in a few minutes, but many of the people that are in need are in war-torn conflict areas. So what's unique about WaterBrick is that you could fill these with dirt. You can build them without. It could be completely empty in the WaterBricks. But if you fill them with dirt, we've tested it and it will stop an M16 armor-piercing round. Not a conversation normally that you would have with this group, but the point there is that now you're bringing into the idea of security and safety for the people that are being ripped apart in those war-torn areas. And there are other things from, floats to a flood barrier to many, many other uses, to helping get medical supplies shipped in, to food and water, and there's a lot of other ideas. But again, coming back to sustainability. And this was the first generation house that we built. And the reason why I brought this up was because, again, when we got to this point, obviously this was the big culmination of the aha moment. And I brought this up because I just wanted to show that there are a lot of different ways to do a roof, to do windows, to do a door. This was an African concept, and what they asked for there was security. So it's a barricade-type door to keep the animals from barging in or rebels from barging in. So there's many things that you could do with that. We, of course, looked at the need, and the need is obviously great, and I don't have to tell any of you that disasters, wars, conflicts, extreme poverty dominate the discussion. I think what shocked me when I started researching this, these are all from the American Red Cross. Their annual report looks back at the last 10 years, and I just want to hit on a couple highlighted points. We average 719 disasters every year. So for those organizations that say, yeah, there's a disaster every couple of years, or we haven't seen much in the last 12 months, this is something that happens every single day. And we average about 2 a day. And if you look at the number of people that are impacted by these disasters, on average, we experience the equivalent of a Hurricane Katrina every 2 days. And we forget that, because a lot of little disasters in a lot of places do add up to the equivalent of what we experienced in Hurricane Katrina, and there was public outcry. This impacts 270 million people, so it's a very large number. The wars and the conflicts, I had to do a little research here because I was surprised at how many countries were currently in a wartime state of some sort. And it's displacing over 28 million people because of that. So these are people that traditionally probably had homes, had lives, had jobs, and they're displaced because of something beyond their control. The extreme poverty, everybody's probably more familiar with this because you see a lot of commercials on TV. We watch a lot of organizations that are raising money on TV. But the bottom line here is that one child dies every 8 seconds. And that's in terms of water. In terms of food, it's 24,000 people every day. And I like analogies because it brings it home to me. And when you think about 24,000 people a day dying from hunger, that's the same as 8 September 11th terrorist attacks every single day, somewhere in the world. So when I look at what those three things have in common, disasters, war, as well as the extreme poverty, they all have in common the same basic need, water and food. And this gentleman said it right when he said, I've had no food or water for 2 days, I have no gas to leave, and I'm stranded right here. There is no going somewhere else. I'm stranded right here. And when I saw that this picture was not from halfway around the world, because a lot of times we think that's the case, it hit home even more when I realized that this was after Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. So it happens everywhere.